Okay, so I'm going to be taking a look at a smart submission because in critiquing it, we can embed the lesson in there. The point of character design is to showcase a character. And what you're showcasing is their personality, their job, their function, their occupation, whatever it is, in the outlet of choice. So if it's a game, if it's a movie. And what we're trying to do in character design or character layout sheets is we're trying to show and showcase and exhibit as much of the character as possible in that one animation shot that you have of them. So you have the opportunity to really have fun with the gesture. And it is in no way like a stiff um, turnaround of a character. An anime, why did I say that? Character design, not anime, a character design layout sheet does not have to be a turnaround like a boring like a T pose turnaround. T pose meaning like they're just standing like this, and you're basically just showing them in different angles as they stand like that. What you can do with a character design showcase is a gesture, and every gesture has to sort of exemplify the character that you're trying to design. And it's a design not just on the costume level and color level and height comparison between the characters, but it is a sort of acting. It's a role that the character is playing. They're playing and showcasing their role. So the explorer is looking in the distance. The stronger girl is sort of the protagonist, I guess, is kind of ready for an adventure. She's holding her purse. This, I don't know, very fabulous space invader kind of guy and his monkey. Suspicious looking kind of burglar, I guess. I'm not sure where is this from. Urukusaki on DeviantArt, it says. But every pose kind of reiterates the point of the costume. So every pose talks about or acts out the costume and the props. The mime is miming, the fabulous lady is showing off her fabulous stuff, and another explorer kind of helping out. I'm not sure. This one speaks to me because he's kind of chubby, but he's holding the binoculars. I'm not sure why he would be holding the binoculars. They're character tropes, of course, and you have to make sure you're not over confusing character tropes too much. You always want to work with the simple and then add craziness to that. Remember, we talked about that last time when we compared the character design with Final Fantasy characters and how they really made no point in any character trope. They weren't telling the story of any specific role or occupation in the game or the movie, and in relation to how they design their characters. So what you want to do is you always want to start with like the one role in the epic drama. The epic drama is like the typical story behind everything. The bad guy, the good guy, the protagonist, the antagonist, or the anti-hero, the minor characters, the love interest, all of that stuff. You have to think about it as an artist. You have to think like writers for a little bit. And if you think like writers, you will not make the mistake of having such a stiff pose. If you think like a writer, well, what I'm looking at is like a smart aleck kind of Aladdin crossover with Monkey D. Luffy, Shark Boy, and he's a pirate. So we're looking at what he's inspiring in me is thoughts or a hint over to Aladdin and a hint over to Monkey D. Luffy. Both of those guys are protagonists. Both of those guys are the big shots. They're the underdog. They're the one who's climbing forward, and yet your pose here is making him feel like he's a secondary minor character. That's the biggest thing about character design. You have to make sure that you guys are acting your character out. You're acting through your character. You're showing off your character in how they behave. So showing off the behavior of a character is probably the first and most important part of designing a character. So when you're drawing a standing character, let me ask you a question. What comes first? When you're drawing anything that has a pose, what do you do first? Does anyone know? He should be inspecting his nails with a smug smirk. That's a good suggestion. That's a really good suggestion. Draw the skeleton, not the skeleton, Asma. Not the skeleton. Action line. Um, That's kind of really a specific kind of line you're talking about. I'm talking about more of a general line that animators use. So let me give you a real hint. Animation walk cycle. Okay, so when you do any animation where you're showing off a really big movement in the character, what you start off with is, anyone finish that sentence? Gesture line, exactly. Good. Thank you, Draken. The gesture line is exactly that. You have to start with the gesture lines. The gesture lines is where you take over that take care of that big initial movement. You taking care of the behavior. The personality is all in the gesture, because at the end of the day, it's your standing figure that you're drawing. Character designs test your knowledge of anatomy a lot as well. So you're going to be, of course, what I see here is really good body anatomy for the male creature. Of course, it reads really quickly. It's just the gesture is missing. So when you create the new gesture, you have to make sure that there is a gesture line on which you're slapping all of this anatomy, or else it'll look really, really stiff. We need a gesture line. If you use the reference really closely for this Esma, I don't know, the feet look really realistic, so I'm thinking like you might have used many photographs or photographs together. However you manage to finish this, please make sure that the gesture line comes first. If you cannot find a gesture line or a reference on Google or wherever where it's the gesture line you want, try try to slapping all that anatomy. Try to act it out yourself and take a picture of it. Or find a male in your life and ask him to pose like that. Because it really will go a long way. The more you put into it, the more it'll give back to you. If you're lazy about your references, then you don't look up a good reference, you're going to have every single one of these characters, every single one of these guys, where is it? All standing in the exact same way. And this is an amazing character design sheet. This is why it's one of the first ones that comes up when you Google it, because it really shows off every single character and their sort of what their whole ish is in the entire painting or the entire concept. I really don't see this as character design. You could call it character design. It's more object design or artifact design. I don't see this as a real exploration of the character. It's very cliche and very boring. And the reason being, it's pulling out of too much anime tropes, pulling out of too much anime pre-made kind of templates. The anime template, the simple girl with feet tucked in, holding a big teddy bear and wearing X large clothes, even though she's an X small. That's all really, that's not what I'm talking about when I say character design. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. Every character is shown off in their respective occupation. Over here we see something very similar to that. Though I don't see any serious exploration of the personality in the character design. So this female here, she could be really just less slouched, because we're standing beside these two and she seems like they're telling a story about her being, not really a confident character, and I see a lot of just really happy business people where they should be more telling a story about their kind of interactions together. So basically, to just cut to the chase, I feel like you should be showing off her curves. I don't know who this person is, but I'm just talking about it. You should be showing off this person's curves, giving them more of a severe kind of personality push, more than we have here. Over here, this is a beautiful gesture. This is probably one of the only ones where we really have something different. Everyone else seems to be standing in a really similar way. The females are pretty much the only ones doing poses. So you don't want to do that. You really want to explore your gesture lines. Let me see. I found an amazing one earlier. That's not the one, but this is good for exploring costumes. So it's just the same pose, but you're exploring different costumes. That's another aspect of character design. You're exploring different costumes for the same character. But the one I was referring to, I should have just saved it. I thought it would just come up again in the search. But it was just this amazing. This is the one they made for. I forget his name, but he's from Up, of course. Where is it? It's just a really, really amazing. So this is not character design, this is sketching. We don't see a full standing exploration of the character, except this one. This was amazing and really well drawn. Not sure about everything else though, but this is what you want. You want amazing gesture that explores and acts out the point of that character. If it's a sorceress, give her a sorceress gesture line, or a gesture, or action. If it's a fighter, you want to give them a sort of a pose ready for battle. I think I clicked on one of these. So when we look back at yours, we see that there's a real lack in the gesture line. And that's not really telling us a proper story about who this character is. I have so many questions and none of them are answered. Is he the protagonist? What's with the scars on his face? How do we explain that? And then there's all of that. There's all of that theory and all of that composition stuff. Not composition stuff, acting stuff, and writing, all the creative force behind character design. And then there's the composition, which is the technical stuff. And that's the stuff that I want to talk about now and paint over with. So, one of the most important things about drawing any character in any open space is a light source. If you don't have one, get one. And getting a light source is not just getting it and placing it somewhere in the room and casting shadows. It's about getting it in its color. So getting a light source means you're getting the yellow of the light source as much as the light source itself. Everyone write back what I just said. Light sources are cool. No, John, long schlong. Get light source color. Exactly. What that does is it brings in the warmth of the atmosphere. So you are indirectly pointing to the atmosphere that this character emerges from. So if he's a pirate and he's just standing there, I'm assuming he's standing in an open space where there's sunlight, probably on a dock or on the ship itself. You probably don't want to choose a really murky day to draw a character. So that's what sort of we want to do. We want to stay away from 25. We want to stay away from murky colors, overcast kind of lighting. We really want to bring in that yellow of the sunlight. And that's going to give more reason for us to show off cast shadows, because cast shadows, they don't cast unless the light is strong enough. Fuck, what am I doing? So what we see here are cast shadows. These shadows will not cast unless the light is so strong. It's letting these shadows cast but maintain their sharpness and their original shape of the shape casting them. Sorry about the lasso. Okay. Cancel. The next most important thing is something that you did as well, but you didn't do, which is the plain gray background. The reason why the plain gray background is so important is because, I don't think I can do this, is because what we want to do is we want to leave all the colors and all of the most important positive stuff, which is the positive space, meaning the character itself, where the object really is. We want to keep that as the main point of the entire character, of the entire composition. We are not creating an illustration where the character is in their environment. We are creating just the character. So you're designing the character for that purpose only, that another artist or 3D modeler is going to take that design and work with it. So don't worry about backgrounds for character design. Don't even worry about it. It's like basically if you had a figurine collection, would you worry so much of, I mean, I laugh every time people show off their figurine collection and they take them out in the grass and they have them stand around in the grass. They're worried so much about showing off like the character. It's a character, it's a figurine. What you want to do is throw a gray background so that you can really show them off for themselves in their own glory. Don't worry about a background. If you worry about background, you're going to have to worry about an action. Why would they just be standing there in the background? It's going to look like a very simple screen selection design or something like that, or a waiting screen splash. It's going to look very odd. We want to make sure that the background is always gray. That way we ensure no other colors are interfering with the colors of the that you chose for the object. Um, you worry only about you express all your rendering power on the object alone. There is nothing else standing in the way that's taking away from this as having been in the spotlight. So I'm going to bring that color. I couldn't lasso successfully, but I'm bringing that yellow light source I was talking about, and I'm going to use it to this image is way too small. Seriously, man. You guys shouldn't upload them so small. So what I'm going to do is use that yellow to build up toward a high point everywhere where there is light already. And what's going to happen is it's not going to change the color of his skin. He's still going to be a blue shark boy, but it's going to be a blue shark boy in an environment where the light source, the god of what's visible, which is the light source, is changing the pigmentation. Everything has to walk through this filter, which is the light source. Also, you really don't want to shrink all the features and have all the features express nothing, and have really the only mode of expression be in the licking of the. Is he licking his lips? Is he licking his scars? Or is he laughing? Which one is it? I'm just waiting for the answer because there's a lag. Whatever it is, please make sure that you're doing more than just a mouth gesture and expressing the character that you're drawing. No, man, his lip is cut. Okay, man. So I'm going to continue with this yellow, and I'll show you the yellow, what it's really done to bring the skin alive, to bring the skin to life. And just like any other portrait drawing, this is why the 14-day challenge is so important, because what it does is that it prepares you for times when you have to really render a face really quickly. So what did you guys learn about character design today? So I'm going to try to give him more of a smug personality. Kind of make him like anarchist kind of guy, like cares about anything. Because that way we have more personality involved. His lip is cut, so he's still smiling. And the smile is really big that it's reached that part of his face. What I'm going to do is gestures are important. Good. Good, good, good. So in my figure drawing book, actually, I talk a lot about gestures and the kind of gestures there are. One of the most important distinctions I make in that book is the difference between what the gestures are saying energy-wise. So is it an open or closed gesture? An open gesture is a gesture that is expressing an explosion of energy. And so if you're going to be choosing this kind of gesture for your character design, then it means, just like that one girl we saw with that was a magician kind of girl, it means that you are going to have to show everything else that's moving on the object. So this little thing would move. This little sash or belt would move if he were to move. If it is a closed gesture, it means that he is pretty much not doing anything. And you try your best not to have closed gestures, meaning zero energy invested in creating that gesture in your character design gesture. Try to make it half in, half out. So half in energy and explosion. Maybe he's lunging, maybe he's leaning on one leg and throwing one arm in the air, maybe he's holding his sword, and sort of lunging forward, whatever it might be. Make sure that you have at least a little bit of energy invested in that gesture. So the kind of reference you're going to be looking for is an active reference. You want some activity. So active gesture. It doesn't have to be explosive. He doesn't have to be jumping up. It doesn't have to be a complete open gesture. But just make sure it's not a closed gesture. Right now what we have here is almost zero energy is needed to just stand there. And that's what you don't want. That's very, very boring, very static. You want something kinetic and really captivating that represents the character's ability to move. Imagine you're an animator and you took one screenshot of a character that you're designing. Which screenshot would you take? Which movement would it be that shows off the character the most? So I'm going to try to make it so that he's kind of doing that. So bear with me. It's been a while since I've tried one of these extreme makeovers. Right, so this is going to be really weird and it's probably not going to work. Flip. Let's see if this works. So this arm would be behind there. So it's basically a Frankenstein kind of thing I'm doing right now, which is good because it's Halloween soon. But that's as much as it is. Alright, let's do this. Woo. Flip horizontally. I'm just trying to get like I know this looks like crap right now. I'm just trying to get like a hand gesture that reads right before I fix it, so don't freak out on me. Alright, probably want to keep it like that. And then this part is showing off, not hiding it. This part is hiding. Alright, alright. It's looking good, I guess. Now let's give his body a lean. So he's leaning on one leg. Meaning this leg here would be a little more lazy. Because it's like, hey, the other leg has got all the work. I think I can take a break. And this, if the leg is relaxed and the feet don't face forward, the feet kind of just don't worry too much. Because the more weight you press on one leg, the more it has to balance you. So it's not just about weight expressing or using up a muscle, it's about the balance. Muscles help you balance. That's why it hurts to defy gravity, because you're trying to balance at the same time as use the muscle. So when you have a leg that's relaxed and you're trying to show off a relaxed leg in a gesture line, you just have to make it not representative of the muscle being used for balance. I also talk about this a lot in my figure drawing book, if you guys are just new to figure drawing. I'm going to kind of stick out his crotch. So there's a very specific schooling when it comes to animation. They teach you about specific gestures accredited to certain kind of characters. And the one thing I learned from animation class was the crotch bulge. Not the crotch bulge as in this, the crotch like thrust forward. Really, really cocky guys do it. Now, if you're walking in the mall and you want to find the cocky guy in the group, look at the guy who, when he stands, pretty much just sticks out his lower half all the way. And that's kind of the guy we're talking about. Since this arm is holding onto this hip, what happens is that this kind of shoulder relaxes a little bit. I'm gonna put this on flip canvas in a second, but I'm really trying to show off this little punk here as it's kind of like a smart aleck kind of I rule the world, I'm gonna be the monkey king kind of thing. So before, after. Do you see what the yellow light did to the chest as well? Well, there's more. There's way more that I could do for the skin to make it more alive. So if we're thinking shark boy, sharks have really reflective, kind of blubbery skin. So we want to find everywhere where there is highlights and kind of just make them connect in one big shiny, I'm wearing oil kind of thing. Very, very oily. Um, sea mammals are very, very oily. Is a shark a mammal? So I'm just trying to make his face a little oilier. Alright, so before? No, it's just a fish? Okay. What's that skin called then? Yeah, he does have nipples. They're just, shy nipples. What's that kind of fish called? The skin on that fish? Blubber. Is it blubber? There's a name for it that also dolphins have. They're mammals. They're not just fish. No way. Sharks that big? I'm just gonna add some reflection here. Okay, then there's everything else, which means I'm never gonna get a good lasso. Stupid lasso. Which is basically we're trying to make it feel like the object is three-dimensional. So what I'm going to be doing is try to make him fit into an open space behind him. And the best way to do that is to fade the z-axis into shadow. Don't get a secondary light source too soon. Just fade away. Fade away the object into a shadow. Get the color of its, the local color, and just fade the z-axis into shadow. Alright? Trust me. Just do it. After you do that, and you decide on a specific place where you want your secondary light source to come from, secondary light source or diffuse or reflected or whatever you want to call it, that's where you can really start adding it in. So let's bring in a secondary light source from the side here to reveal some of these bits. I can only add in a secondary light source unless I have established the core shadow of the primary light source. So this is why I cast a shadow on the z-axis of every bit here, because the light is shining in from this direction, casting an even shadow down. I can't bring a secondary light source in unless I have an established and clean core shadow on the dark side of the body. What did I just say? Everyone repeat it. Shark Week. It's really sandpapery and rough? No way. So I'm gonna do that again. I'm so sorry, I'm really, really sick today. I know you guys are probably sick of hearing that by now, but I don't really sound very energetic. And I sound very stuffy, and I'm probably gonna cough in like 2 seconds. Okay, it's gonna happen. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm bringing that secondary light source in. It's probably like the sails. It's probably the harbor or something. A little bit on his chin from the side. And we're kind of getting a more three-dimensional feel for all of this stuff. For all of this shit. Oops. I need to go fix that up because lasso is a little dingus. Okay. Good, good, good. Secondary light after the core shadow. Yes way. Yes way. You can add a secondary light source until you okay. Backlighting from a sunset maybe? Yeah. Yeah, good job, Big Nels. So this is really low res, as you guys can see. I need a little bit higher res than this. Another thing that happens with a standing character that's going to be available to you guys in the app that we're designing is the contrast climb, the contrast ladder on which all things follow. This means that where the light source is closest to, which is basically the upper body, anything below that gets darker. You simply do not make that stuff that is not important, stuff that is not the light source, stuff that is not close to the light source, that is not the focal point, as important as the light source in your character design. So I threw in a bunch of diffusey stuff. What I'm going to do is erase away only where I know that there is a high point in the, or an altitude in the anatomy. So the shin bones get some light only. Look at how bright it was before. It was just attracting too much attention. The eyes aren't going back up, but here the eyes are going back up. Then we've got the top side of his feet, and that's it. Secondary light source, my bad. But that's it. That's all you need for feet or anything that is below the waist, because you don't want attention to be drawn there. I also threw a gray over that, and that should kind of fix everything up. So this is a good character design layout for that a-hole character, that protagonist. I can sleep with any girl I want kind of guy. So before, after, the gesture is really important. There wasn't much I could do with my Frankenstein experimentation, but this is as much as I can do with this low res and this time constraint. But I hope that with this critique you guys are sort of getting the basic principles of character design. So can anyone list out, like in order, how do you work with a character design? How do you start a character design Can anyone start us up on that? Give us a list. Someone write me down a list of the most important stuff to think about in the beginning. Aw, Big Nails, you're so sweet. It is very good, Asma. Amazing attempt. You had the courage to do it, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you for doing one for today's theme week. If these theme weeks are getting cheesy as fuck, let me know. I'll stop doing them. I just feel like they're really fun because we're actually doing something together. You know, we never really do anything together. We don't talk anymore. Gesture first, then light source, then core shadow. Gesture, good. And then the secondary light source after that. If you have a gesture line, Asma, you kind of missed some stuff. So when you start, this is what I give my private students. This is what I give everybody. This list here. When you do anything that is related to any gesture anatomy, the most important thing is the gesture line. Okay, so gesture line. After that, we have on the gesture line we are throwing cubes or shapes. These shapes have to not be these, but be these. Meaning they have to be three-dimensional. When you make a three-dimensional shape sit on top, this is basically the Byrne-Hogarth method. Sit on top of a gesture line, what you do is you always have something telling you, hey buddy, there's a right angle here. If you bring any muscle knowledge in here, those muscles have to also be three-dimensional. So it means when you're shading and you're bringing those muscles in, you are always thinking about that part of the cube. See that? It's just an instinct. You build it and you always add it in there. When you shine a light, so after the shapes comes the anatomy. So 1, 2, 3, anatomy. After the anatomy, of course, you have to start blocking in the light source. Light source. So when you bring in the light source, all of this stuff here has already been designed to help you know exactly where to place it. So meaning, if you have a light shining on, it's only restricted to this part of the cube because that cube you drew at this level is telling you there's an edge here, please don't put any light here because that's where that edge stops. Light doesn't wrap around. Light just comes in and then goes back out. It doesn't come in and say, hey, let me visit the neighbors. Hey, how you guys doing? Hey, no, none of that. It just bounces in and bounces back out. This is the list. This is the list. My messy old teaching style list. Any questions? Gesture, personality of the character, main lighting. Very good. Hell nah, man. I love doing these. Okay, man. Hell nah, man. You're such a G, Asma. Gesture, story, Story comes first. No, no, no. Wrong, Kuro. The story is what starts you off in the concept to begin with. The story is what made the people hire you so that you can draw this person. So you as the artist have to also be a writer. You are a writer, and the writer in you comes out after you read the basic blurb. Hey, I'm hiring a character design concept sheet for $250. Here's the description. You have to read that description. You don't just read the color of his hair and the color of his pants, and then you just draw whatever the heck you want, as long as you have um, uh, uh, the color of the props in the right way. That's not enough. That's not enough for you as the concept artist. You are conceptualizing, meaning you have to bring out the writer in you. Read, his greatest triumph. What is his greatest failure? The color of his eyes have nothing to do with the gesture you're going to choose. What did I just say? Everyone write it back to me. What essentially am I talking about? Where do you really bring out the gesture from? Cheesiest, just start insulting everyone's work. I don't insult people's work. Start off with a concept and explore silhouettes. Very good, Chappa. Silhouettes are a great place to just not worry too much about detail and just explore kind of the gesture and the basic scale, all just in a fairly safe sandbox kind of environment. Light, edgy, but still doesn't rap. What's a gesture line? I came in later. Black Oreo cookie, you know what a gesture line is. To be honest, I have so many characters with stories but no faces. There are refs for that. What's a gesture line? From the story. Gesture comes from a story. Good. Then forego faces, big nose. You don't need a face on a character to tell a story. What is it? A gesture line is the line of movement that anything has. You can have a gesture line in embroidery. But we're talking about the anatomy of a human being as used in a character design concept. So we're talking about the gesture lines used to summarize the largest movements in a character's body as it stands or whatever. We're summarizing a movement with lines. Gesture lines, lines of movement. It is not the line of projection. It is not the line of action. That's very different. That's very different. That's a very specific term in anatomy. Not anatomy, in animation. I can't spell. The gesture reflects the character, the body language. So when you're deciding the character's gesture line, okay, how am I going to make this guy stand up? What am I telling here in this character design? You have to go to the description of the character. Again, what's his personality like? What is he like? Again, you do not choose the character's gesture line according to the color pants he likes to wear. If he does wear pink, fuchsia kind of color, then you have a hint exactly on how he's supposed to be standing. Looking at his nails. Alright, if he's wearing these color pants, then I think this is a really safe gesture. I don't know what the hell I was, like a flamingo, but like a very flamboyant, fabulous kind of guy. Anyway, the gesture line is where you decide. So story, gesture. Look at this fucking okay. Gesture line, shapes, anatomy. Remember the 3D. Anatomy, and then finally the rendering, or the light source, sorry. Shapes, light source. Well, that's kind of what I mean by rendering. As soon as you bring in a light source, that's when you start rendering. So let's call this whole shebang rendering. Rendering. Any questions? So it's like the stick figure skeleton of the pose. Not the skeleton, because if you guys say skeleton, then it's just another whole thing. Skeletons are stiff. Skeletons have a very specific place in history. They don't have an elegant movement to them. They have a very set, pre-made template kind of setup. When I say gesture line, let me do a quick sketch. This is kind of my pirate that I wanted to do. when we say gesture line, this is kind of what I mean. Where's that awesome pencil I made? Alright. So I kind of wanted like funny looking character. This right here, these are gesture lines, alright? And I wanted his whole leg to be like a wooden peg. And he's got like one massive boot, which is really shitty. And he's kind of got this really funny walk to him. He's kind of like a cowboy pirate, and he's really, really fat. This is the gesture line. I'm trying to show one moment in his action as an animator. I'm trying to think like an animator. So he's got his buckaroo kind of belt, but that's the only artifact really I'm pulling out from the basic Caribbean kind of pirate. Everything else is just a mockery of of him, and he's kind of has that wobble. He probably has like a side cape, like a fucking massive ass gun. I don't even know how to draw guns. I'm just really winging it right now. And this is the loose stuff. You can have fun. I skip the shape stage because I see the shape in my head. I cheat because I think I've done this enough to cheat. But you guys can't cheat. All right, don't cheat. After you throw in the gesture lines, basically just do this instead of doing what I did. So draw the side of the cube. Draw the side of this. Draw the side of this. Oh, thank you, Chamba and Goomba. That's really Chapa and Goomba. It's the Sire pencil work on Instagram. Amazing. Seriously, those half lioness women have so much character to them. Thank you. Everything I teach right now is what you guys is what I like. Everything that I teach is what I actually do in my process, except for the shapes because I skipped that stage. Um, and after this stage, what I usually do is I just lower the opacity, go in with sharper lines. You do this in animation as well, and just find those areas of the best that are supposed to, like, the most important gestures after you've dressed up the gesture. So the gesture of the cape is really important to his animation. So maybe he's trying to like toss it out of the way while he's walking. Then he's got kind of want to add some more. So here I would throw in the realistic shape, the 3D shape, because I want that sort of army shoulder pad thing, and I want to give some movement to that because he's in the middle of walking. So I'll throw the gestures in first, and then I'll go and dress him up. I just want to make him feel like he's walking, and then I want to really make it feel like he's just really straining to keep walking on this massive peg. That makes zero sense. And when you lay something on the ground, such as a foot, you have to have the 3D in your mind if you lay something on the ground. So when I draw the base of the peg of his foot, I have to remember the cube. That's where I bring it back, because the cube is here now. And it's really important for me to keep it there. And then I'll throw some really rough texture for the texture of that. Maybe I'll have a bit of the wood he used to make that maybe a little. I really laugh at my characters too much. Some trees, probably a nest. And then a really funny little boot. Then he's got that horse thing. I don't know how he gets on his horse, because he needs to kind of control his horse. I don't know how he does it, but alright, and then I'm thinking about the cube. See, without the cube, I would not be able to place this foot on the ground. So remember, the shape stage after you have your gesture lines is really, really important. And everything's kind of just being pulled up and thrown up by this massive peg that doesn't bend. So when you have legs that bend, you're going to have that maneuverability. But because he's kind of wobbling from one peg to the other leg, everything's kind of just pushed up. So the belt is pushed up. And maybe he's got like Elton John glasses. And that kind of funny hat thing that happens. I don't know why it happens. I don't know where I learned that hats can, like, like cans, they can lose their top. I don't know where I learned that. He's probably a really poor, miserable pirate, so I'm just going to give him some stuff to make him a little more miserable. So the gesture line starts it off. And this is his nose, by the way. And these are his glasses. That's what I want to see from you guys. His wife calls him Peggy. That's great. Yes, you can name him Peg Leg Waddles. Yes, absolutely. Maybe we can give him some crazy hair. Now he's starting to look like a protagonist. If you guys see those recent Imager posts, spot the protagonist. The character with the most retarded hair is the protagonist. Do pirates have horses? No, the point was that it's not a traditional pirate. That was the point of this week's theme. It's that, you're breaking all the rules of the pirate. So he could be a sand pirate, and you could have like a, like he's like a Wild Wild West kind of pirate. Doesn't have to be. Maybe he's got that frilly Elton John. Yeah, I think this is like basically inspired by Elton John. Yeah, he doesn't have to be like a traditional pirate. That was the point of today's class. Yeah, doesn't have to be a marine pirate. Speaking of pirates rules, today's pirate, good pirates never take another person's property. That's blasphemy. He pirates DVDs. We're all pirates here then. So does everyone see what I'm saying? Does anyone have any comments on, look how messy that shit is. Does anyone have any comment on today's class? 38%. How to draw now. A Zoolander type puff shirt. He's Elton John's biggest fan. So when you design characters, please don't draw a background. Keep the background gray. Work from lines. Really get a strong gesture line. So the gesture line here that I use, remember it's either CS or I for your gesture lines. Right now what I have is just one big C. And I'm probably going to take away a lot from, so I'm going to just do that, something like that, just to make it even more of a C. So he's just basically walking around like a C. The simpler you can summarize, basically he's just like this. The simpler you can summarize something, the easier it is to animate it. And the easier it is to animate it, the more elegant it looks. So he kind of does like this kind of walk cycle. From here, and then he waddles over onto this, and his leg just lags behind. Waddle, waddle. Upside down C. Really, really simple gesture line that is very easy to animate. And that's the point of gesture lines. They capture motion. Of course animators will be drawn to gesture lines. Of course you have to learn gesture lines if you want to animate ever. But you don't have to be an animator. What I'm saying is try to think like an animator so that you have more motion and movement in your character design. So they look a lot more like what we looked at earlier at the beginning of the lesson. And less stiff. So before, after. This is as much as I could do with this. And this definitely has a gesture. He's being a real smug, crotch sticking out kind of dude. I really don't know what to call it. What's the name? It's like smug? Smug, confident. Yeah. Protagonist smug levels. Anime protagonist smug levels. There we go. Okay guys, have a nice day. Bye-bye.